the bubbles is something that you could also do with roving. So actually, I need some roving. Somebody grab me a little bit of roving from that pile over there. I thought I was ready. Perfect. Let me put this color in Aisha's. So this orange yarn that you see in this one is a yarn that is like thick and thin. So parts of it are really thin, parts of it are really thick. And so the parts that are thick, I did something called floats, meaning that instead of going over and under every single thread, I go under one and then over like 5 on the part that was really fat to just leave it over on the top. And that's also something that I did on this one, only with a yarn that's less thick and thin. So you can see the parts where there's yarns that got floated across the surface. And particularly with yarns that have a lot of texture, you can see like you can get some pretty interesting effects. And it's something that you can really take advantage of with something that's super thick like roving. So if you're gonna use any roving in your weaving, just like spinning, you wanna split it into narrower chunks. I would say 4 maybe. And then you can kind of smooth it out or draft it accidentally. And then I just kind of give it a little tiny bit of twist to make it a little bit stronger for when I'm pulling it through. And then I'm going to weave with it just like yarn. So you can weave with it normally like yarn. And if you're using yarn that's thicker than the distance between your 2 warp threads, you will just end up being able to see some of the warp. Like that just kind of happens if you have really thick yarn. So if you're weaving with roving straight up, going under and over every other one, it'll create sections in your weaving where you can see the warp, which is okay. It's a design element. So if you want to have like a really like major contrast in textures like that, I would encourage you to play with it. But another thing you can do with roving is this floats technique, where instead of going over and under every other one, I'm gonna go over like 5. And then the amount of bubble is just like how tight I pull it. And so that's something that you can really play with a lot.
You can kind of mix colors with that too, huh?
Mm-hmm. And then I can just like go back the other way, kind of go under different threads than I went under last time to sort of stagger the bubbles, and you can create areas of like really interesting like bubbly texture that way. The other thing you can do, this kind of tufted look, is called Rya. It's spelled R-Y-A, and it's how like tufted like rugs are made. And you're gonna laugh at how easy it is. Literally, you just want to cut sections of yarn that are twice as long as the tufts that you want. So this is how long they would be if I had them that long. And then going one at a time, I'm just hooking them on. But for every row of Rya that you do, you want to anchor it down with a row of plain weave. So I would go across
2, right?
a row or 2, yeah.
You don't tie them together? No?
So that's how I did this part.
So you can just loop them on like that, or if you want them to be a little bit more directional, meaning that they kind of go more that way or that way instead of straight out, you can go and do it a little bit more like the latch hooking that you might have done in the 80s if you're my age.
I did teach you.
Where it's like this, where you're going around 2 and then coming out between, and it's kind of like a little set of legs. And then depending on which side you have this, then the fringe will go more that way. So those are 2 ways of doing Rya. Either way, you still have to do a row of plain weave. Like by row, I mean over again to anchor it for every row of raya. Questions?
Do you have to do that same thing to hold it in place with the top? Like, it just stays in place?
I would not recommend doing your whole weaving with this because it wouldn't be very structurally sound. But as long as, because you can see where there's like long stretches where I wasn't going under the warps. But as long as every once in a while you do some plain weave in there, it'll be pretty structurally sound with the floats. Yeah. So it's raya, floats, weaving with roving. And the roving is the same as the yarn, where when I end with it and I don't want to deal with it, I can just tuck the ends to the back and like worry about it later. I'm all for putting off the unpleasant task of dealing with all of the ends. So can we talk a little bit about dealing with the ends when you're all done? Are you feeling ready for that? I know everybody's not watching though, but
It's fine. I think we should just do it. 'Cause-
just break the seal.
yeah.
For those of you that chose to opt out of the textural demo, I just want to let you know I'm also going to show what it looks like to take your weaving off the loom when you're all done.
So that you might want to come over and see that,
Yeah,
please.
so you might want to come over for that.
So like, for this, what I
So these cardboard looms are designed to be one-time use, and I encourage you to not try and like save it to reuse, because it's going to be much more trouble than it's worth.
First.
The best way to take this off the loom is to cut the cardboard in half, and be very careful not to cut your weaving or your hand. And this is like really fun to like see how messy the back is.
Maybe just take off one side so then you can do it on the other side.
I was thinking the same thing. And then to free the ends of the warp from the notches is just a matter of very carefully sliding it off without like pulling too much. It might even help to like fold back the ones that are not wrapped and like get in there with your fingernails, or your needle could be a very good tool for this. And just work your way across and pull one at a time off of there. Can everybody see what I'm doing? And I'm like literally totally destroying this loom in the process. And they are made of recyclable cardboard. They're intended for one-time use, so don't try to
Joel,
save
can
them.
we show your loom for anyone who wants to do it more?
Yeah, if you end up falling in love and you want like an inexpensive way to build a loom, this is less than $10 worth of materials from Home Depot, where it's copper pipe. These threaded rods and the bolts make it so that you can have this distance grow and shrink to adjust the tension of your warp. It's a good system.
Would you be willing to like walk us through that process?
Of building the looms?
Yeah. If
Or like send a link.
extra?
It's been suggested to me that I do loom building workshops. I don't know. I will think about it.
Maybe a YouTube.
Yeah. There are tutorials out there. Okay, so I got it all the way off. And then there's like a little bit extra ears there. But when Aisha was weaving the last couple rows, she really packed it down a lot and got as many rows of yarn in there as possible, so that when we took it off, we could just kind of zhuzh it a bit.
You don't know how much I packed it.
Yeah.
How do you spell Jewish?
Not just zhuzh. To just scoot it out so that we have this nice clean edge. Isn't that a beautiful thing?
It's so amazing.
And then we have all these ends.
Which she thinks are gonna meet up, and I'm like, oh no,
If they meet up,
that's not
great.
how I did
What
it
do you
at
mean
all.
meet up where?
Meaning
Oh,
like
look
where
at-
one color ends and one starts.
See
Like-
how this is all nice and neat? Like she's like, she'll like do a color and then like, oh, that's where I ended, so I'll just start there again. But that is not my brain function.
Same.
You too? And so I was just like, oh, I'm done with that part. Blah, 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 start somewhere else. And so
It's fine though.
that's what it looks like.
So all of these ends, like we can just literally tie a little knot, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Like this is very low stakes. It's the backside that no one will ever see. All I'm doing is tying enough of a knot so that it can't like pull through and have an end sticking out on the front side. Like this is just pull through prevention that you're doing. So you can go through and clean up, like tie little knots on the backs of all your ends, and then after you tie a knot, then you can cut the ends a little bit shorter, and then you'll have a much more like groomed back. But I would very much expect your backs to look a lot like this, because every time you start a new piece of yarn or end a piece of yarn, just tuck it to the back and worry about it when you take it off the loom.
You're tying a knot in one piece of yarn, not two yarns together?
You can do either one.
Okay.
I don't have 2 yarns together,
Yeah. See,
whereas
like,
she does.
This knot
So-
just like untied itself already, so. But it happened to be 4 strands of yarn held together, so I'm gonna tie it to itself. But yeah, you can just tie a single piece of yarn. And if it's really like fat yarn that doesn't seem like it's gonna pull through because your weaving is packed tight enough, you can just cut it like a little bit short and not even worry about the knot. But that's up to you.
Okay.
And
Other
I just,
questions?
I just want to show one thing.
Yeah.
See this size of this circle? That is the size of this whole circle.
Because it's like this.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I followed it, but because the yarn is,
Mhm.
so I think that's pretty interesting, and you can actually see it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's cool. And I just wanted to show something else about Aisha's weaving, is that you can see that there's places where the weft is not going straight on a horizontal, that it started to creep up into an angle. And that's actually a thing called eccentric weft. The length of this like workshop was not such that I could go over that, but I just wanted to like let you know that that's a thing that's possible, that you don't necessarily have to stay on the horizontal. I would encourage you to stay under 45 degrees, but
If we wanted to do that, what would we Google to find a tutorial?
eccentric weft.
Eccentric left.
Sounds like me.
Oh,
I just did it
That's my
out
political
of
identity.
Yeah.
not following a straight line.
Very
Aquarius.
So
Like essentially you just start.
like it wasn't straight.
no, it was packed down, but I just like
Roasted.
built up, and then I was like, oh, I just want to go this way.
So what she did was like, I can draw it actually. So like here's the uprights, and you kind of like are going back and forth, and you're building up your shape. And then she was like, oh, I'm gonna go over here now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's totally what I did.
Yeah. And it is a way to get away from that pixelization effect. Yeah.
Yeah, to like smooth it out.
You can use it to smooth out some curves.